Hey guys, I am Game Advisor and welcome to our top 7 survival games of the year video. Today I'm going to be talking about 7 different survival games as well as 2 to 3 bonus games, so do be on the lookout for those. Now let's get started off with number 7. Number 7 on our list is going to be Against the Storm. Against the Storm is a newer colony survival sim that hit the market not too long ago. This game is essentially a roguelike meets colony sim merge with lots of survival aspects in between. It allows you to work with different races and work against the clock to expand as fast as you possibly can in order to upgrade your city so that you'll be able to do better the next time you play through on your next run and get further and further out. There are several unique biomes, and while this game is still in development, it has tons of replayability, and for such a cheap price tag, if you are even remotely interested in colony sim survival games, I definitely recommend you give it a try.
Your goal is to help rebuild the smoldering city and secure the future of the Queen's subjects.
Following that is Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress is a micromanagement dream. It allows you to play a colony sim survival game with just ridiculous amounts of depth. Now, if I'm being honest, some people are going to absolutely love this game and some people are going to hate it. If you're, say, a Rust player, I would honestly say probably just stay clear, because odds are it's not going to be fast enough for you, and it's going to be just a little bit too in-depth to the point at which it's almost not fun. Now, if you're, say, a RimWorld player, and you feel like you would just like to have some more depth to your game, I highly recommend you do give Dwarf Fortress a try. Like I said, it's got tons of depth to it, it's got tons of different mechanics going for it, it is everything you could ever want in a colony sim survival game, outside of the roguelike unique aspects that games like our previous one bring to the table. It came out originally 20 years ago, but with the new graphics update they've just brought to the table, it makes it much more accessible for newer players. Either way, it's definitely worth at least checking out if it's something you're interested in. Next up is one that was extremely popular when it hit the market, and that is going to be V Rising. V Rising is a sort of top-down survival game where you'll be playing as a vampire and trying to build yourself a castle while unlocking all the abilities from defeating multiple different bosses. In PvE content alone, this game offers an absolute ton of content that easily makes it worth the price. Now, do keep in mind there is a whole PvP aspect to the game that you can opt into if that's something you want to do. That will add tons more replayability value, but also will make the game significantly more difficult. V Rising offers tons of different abilities, weapons, and a pretty large map for you to explore, all while dealing with the sun, which is a unique mechanic specifically to V Rising. In other words, it makes travel important, and it makes it so you have to be conscious about where you're traveling. If you travel during the day, and you happen to catch yourself in the sun for too long, you will burst into flames just like any vampire should, because we don't sparkle in our vampire games. Either way, V Rising is definitely worth checking out if you didn't pick it up earlier on, and even if you have, it's got a lot of cool content going on right now, so it's worth going back and just giving it another try if you haven't played it since release. Alrighty, we are now halfway there with Darktide. Darktide is a survival horde game. This means it'll be very similar to games like Left 4 Dead and Vermintide 2. In fact, it's actually made by the same devs that made Vermintide 1 and 2. It's got all the dark grittiness of the Warhammer 40k universe, but also allows you to play with your friends in a quick session-based game mode. You'll find yourself going through different missions on a wide variety of difficulties, getting new abilities, changing the way your abilities work, and giving you the option to choose through multiple classes. Darktide is also planning to release new content in the near future, so do make sure you keep an eye on it even if you played it at release and are just now taking a break. Personally, it is a dark and gritty game like no other, and it brings something unique to the survival horde aspect in the way that you play, since you'll be using ranged and melee constantly and have to play around the way your classes work on higher difficulties while also coordinating with your team. If you don't like multiplayer, however, I would actually tell you just to stay away from Darktide, as it's a very heavily multiplayer focused game, although you can play it without talking to other players if that's something you want to do, but is not recommended.
If we fail, the Imperium falls with us.
Third to last is going to be Grounded. Now you may be thinking, wait a second, Grounded's been out for quite a while. And yes, it has, but it has been in early access. They've now released the full version of Grounded as of September 2022. It is a completed game now, and you can actually go through and check out all the new content. If you haven't played this in even 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, however long it's been since you played the game, you need to go give this another shot. There is so much content and so much more fun to be had with it if you haven't played it in a while. This is great to play with 2 to 3 friends, as there's nothing like fighting giant ants or spiders or whatever else you might encounter whenever you're actually playing Grounded. To me, I think the coolest aspect is just the fact that you are so tiny and you get to fight creatures that you would normally never get to fight in any other survival game. Either way, if you haven't checked it out, now is a great time to do so, as they did just fully release the game, so you'll have access to what the game was always meant to be. And if you have played it before and just haven't played it in a while, give it another shot, as there's a lot more to experience now. Second to last on our list is Core Keeper. Core Keeper is probably one of the most basic, if not most unique games that have come out this year. Core Keeper is essentially a survival game that is top-down and uses pixel art graphics. It works very similar to games like Terraria, as it takes heavy inspiration from those games. It has bosses that feel very similar to fighting things like you would in Terraria, and it's also a pretty cheap title with new content still on its way. Right now, there are several biomes for you to experience, and they've just added a new biome to the game not too long ago. So if you did complete everything that was available at launch, I highly recommend you go load up your old save and play through the new content, as that is super fun too. Either way, Core Keeper is a great game, whether it be just you or a bunch of friends. I do want to also specifically state that Core Keeper is in early access, which means there is tons of new content on the way, so do keep in mind that if you pick it up now, there may be more content in the future for you to play, all while purchasing it for the same price tag. Now, before we move on to our last game, I do want to give out 3 honorable mentions, and those are going to go to Vampire Survivors, which is a very cheap game, and if you haven't played it, you definitely need to. There's about 1 million phone game ripoffs of this thing already, but it is a super fun, progression-based roguelike game where you have to survive as long as possible as hordes of enemies come at you. It's top-down, the controls are incredibly simplistic, as all you need is WASD or your mouse to play, so I highly recommend you give it a try. Following that is Project Zomboid, and the reason it's a bonus game and not actually on the list is because we're just talking about the new update. Project Zomboid's update completely changes so many systems in the game. If you've played Project Zomboid sometime before the last 6 months, I highly recommend you go give it another shot, as it's got so many new mechanics, better graphics, and so much more for you to experience. They've even added new places, as well as adding completely changed ways as to how combat, stealth, and leveling works within the game. It is a great update and very fun to play, and now you can even play it in multiplayer. Our last honorable mention today is going to be Elden Ring. Elden Ring is arguably the best game of the year. It is arguably a survival game, but more of a Souls-like, which is why I didn't put it on the actual list itself, since it really doesn't necessarily fit that survival game niche. There's no food, there's no water, you're not battling the elements, but it still has some survival aspects to it, since you're managing your inventory, you're having to fight mobs, and you're trying to survive and learn from those deaths and then continue. Either way, if you haven't heard about Elden Ring by now, I would be shocked, so just know if you haven't picked it up, now is a great time to do so. It is super fun, and it is really enjoyable to play. Now, our number 1 game for 2022 is going to be RAFT. RAFT is a game where you will find yourself stranded on nothing more than a couple of planks floating out in the middle of the ocean, and you will work your way into building a super ginormous raft that will propel you throughout the world and take you to different destinations. There are several main story islands now that add tons of awesome content to the game. There's some replayability at the end game, although be it it not that much, it is still there. The game has a unique art style, and the game is just fun all around. There were tons of unique puzzles too, which I personally really enjoyed when doing the story missions. Although some of you might find them more difficult than others, they're still super fun to engage with. The game is also playable with your friends, and the reason I actually chose to put it on this list as our number 1 slot is because of the fact that it just came out with its full release, which allows you to complete the storyline. There is so much in this game. It's got bosses, it's got a balanced resource management system that keeps you actively trying to get food, and it doesn't become completely ignorable halfway through the game. It has a fun and intriguing story, it has multiple playable characters now, and most of all, it is a unique idea and very well executed. Yes, there are other games where you play on a raft in the ocean that are technically survival games, but none of them have executed even nearly to as well as Raft has. It is super accessible for new players to the survival genre, so whether this be your very first survival game, or this be your 100th survival game and you are super experienced, it will satisfy you no matter what. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and make sure to comment down below if you disagree with me at all. Maybe I got the order wrong, maybe there's a game I completely didn't even think about that should have been on this list. Either way, I want to give a big shout out to our Platinum and Above channel members, which include Caustic FPV, Jonathan S, and Jim Phillips. Thank you all so much for watching. It has been a great year, and we're looking forward to go into 2023. I'm Game Advisor, and I'll see you next time.